We're very excited to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. This is exciting for me because it's kind of a homecoming, too. I went to college here. When I graduated, I had zero money. In fact, I remember it was less than $20 in the bank and needed to go see a doctor, and Planned Parenthood is who stepped in there. So North Austin Planned Parenthood, thanks. Cecile, I guess to start, one of the things that is really maddening to me, even in this moment, is how even people who are very reasonable and should be very informed still are not very clear on what it is that the mission of Planned Parenthood is. So once and for all, at South by Southwest, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, it probably won't be once and for all, though. I guess I'd say it's sort of a constant. But also, can I say it's like nice to be home myself, because I'm an Austinite. And so, in fact, someone just pulled up a photograph. This is really funny, of the very first South by Southwest conference, which was in music, and my mom, Ann Richards, was the keynote speaker. So it was really, it's kind of nice to be back.
That's so cool.
Anyway, go Mom. So Planned Parenthood, well, first of all, we're celebrating our 100th anniversary this year, so that's pretty incredible. And one interesting thing is people say, oh my gosh, it seems like it's so controversial. Well, our founder, of course, was thrown in jail for providing information about birth control. So we were founded and have always been a movement that tried to push the envelope in terms of reproductive health care rights and access. But right now we are the only national reproductive health care provider in this country. We serve about 2.5 million patients every year, and very proud of that fact. Half of our health centers are in medically underserved communities, and that can mean everywhere, but it includes a lot of rural and small towns. We provide health care to 1 in 5 women in this country at some point in their lifetime. So glad that you were an alumni, as am I. And we provide, of course, family planning, and we're very proud of the fact that we provide all kinds of family planning. We provide every single kind of birth control method, and fortunately, they're getting better. We provide STI testing and treatment to a lot of folks. We provide cancer screenings to many of our patients. We're their only doctor. And we're proud to provide safe and legal abortion, and we always will. And we always will.
So I guess the big question for us here at South by is, how does this 100-year-old healthcare provider and the platform that powers over 300 million blogs, how does that relationship make sense? It seems like strange bedfellows, right?
I hope not. So we started hanging out for the first time, Cecile and I, and our teams, when Planned Parenthood showed up on Tumblr a few years ago now as one of the first kind of causes and nonprofits really using Tumblr in these just phenomenal and interesting ways, and these ways that really engaged our community in ways that helped Planned Parenthood progress its mission, helped our community find the information that they needed and find more ways to get kind of attached to and participate in this cause that was, they knew was important to them. They didn't necessarily know the way in yet and what they could do to help. So Planned Parenthood was on there early. They had a handful of blogs doing everything from LGBT outreach, sex education, answering questions. They had nurses and doctors on there answering questions, and lighting up advocates and evangelists for the fights and for the mission that Planned Parenthood was out in front of. So they were doing this so phenomenally well that we wanted to hang out, not really to give these guys any advice. We didn't think that we had any of the answers. We really wanted to kind of hang out and take notes and see what we could learn and take away from that to make our platform better and maybe share with other folks, other organizations that wanted to do the same. So that's when we started talking a few years ago. Yeah.
And it's been fabulous. I just have to say, Tumblr has been on the forefront of helping us figure out, again, for an organization that's really committed to trying to take away barriers to information, education, healthcare, being a place where it's welcoming and non-stigmatizing, non-judgmental. The Tumblr community is our community, and it's just been, I just want to really give it up for David and the company for being willing to get out there when no one else would on these issues, and I think we're changing people's lives as a result, so thank you, David.
I think that you make a really, really good point about how the fact that the community just had no stigma is the reason that we see such good storytelling, I think, specifically on Tumblr. I think we've seen that around other issues. But for you, David, was reproductive rights something that you've been thinking about for a long time, or like kind of where does your thinking come from there?
So I'm now the third generation of my family to be involved with Planned Parenthood in some capacity. So there were two generations of women before me who were very involved in the organization. So yeah, it was always an organization I knew about, had an appreciation for, that I valued. Growing up, though, I had the experience that I think a lot of people my age went through, which certainly I think every teenager goes through, which is like the terror, self-doubt, and kind of questions that go along with growing up and trying to figure out what the hell your body is doing and how any of this stuff works. And I was one of the first generation that turned to the internet to answer a lot of those questions. And I remember even then, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, getting online through AOL, searching for this stuff, Planned Parenthood was one of the first kind of resources for the kind of canonical sex ed, answers to questions that actually made sense, that I actually came to trust. And just having a lot of folks that work in healthcare in my life, and a whole community of pretty young people using our platform, I was just constantly reminded that people are constantly going through that process, and an experience that's really pretty terrorizing. These moments where you think that you totally screwed up, have ruined yourself or your life forever, and just because of the stigma is attached to these questions, these conversations in this country, you have too much shame to ask your parents. You don't have a relationship with your doctor. It's too weird and embarrassing to talk to your friends or anyone at school about. So where do you go? Well, now you're going to turn to the web. You're going to turn to your phone, the internet, and it was just very clear to me that Planned Parenthood was going to be the trusted source for answers to those questions, for that help and that support. And just, again, spending so much time in this community that is so young, so many people who are going through all of these moments, just being constantly reminded of that and how important it was. So that's kind of what drew me in.
That's cool. Cecile, can you walk us through some of the ways that Planned Parenthood is using tech and innovation to really change the services that you're providing, or the way that you're providing them?
Sure, and I want to pick up on what David said, because, and I think maybe Chelsea is here, I'm not sure, but yay, Chelsea, who we talked the other day. Chelsea works at Planned Parenthood and answers a lot of questions of young people. And the interesting thing is, so I've been at Planned Parenthood now 10 years, and the questions not only haven't changed in 10 years, they really haven't changed from when I was a teenager. I think the kinds of questions that we constantly get, and just shows an indication of how much more we can do for young people are, do you think I'm pregnant? Could I be pregnant? How do you get pregnant? Am I normal? Even is this normal, with a photograph attached? This is it's really, honestly, the same basic information that we're not doing a good enough job of in this country of providing young people is where technology has really helped us. So now we have a text chat program. Thousands of young people text with us every month. And again, even though some of the questions are the same questions, I think one of the things we've really learned, and Chelsea's been a great, has really seen this, is that even if you have the same question and it's answered on a website, a lot of young people, they just have to reach out and talk to somebody in their terms. And so having that ability, and I think that's one of the things we're really interested in working with the tech community on, is how can we ever get this scalable so that folks who really, really need to reach out to somebody can find them. It's completely transformed our ability for people to tell their stories, and I think that has a lot to do with how we change stigma and shame in this country. It used to be you could never get these stories were never covered in the news, but I remember the first time we were under the attack from then Congressman Mike Pence, now Vice President Pence, in case you missed that transition. But the first time he led the campaign to defund Planned Parenthood at the federal government, through Congress, it was Deanna Zant, who's also just this awesome, awesome friend, who started a Tumblr page, Planned Parenthood Saved My Life. And that was when we just saw this organic explosion of folks beginning to tell their stories about how Planned Parenthood had been there for them. And that was the beginning of storytelling, which I think tech has catapulted, and particularly for folks who never get their stories told. Mm-hmm. So women of color, LGBT community, it's just it sort of began to level the playing field. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of other ways, but I think even the cultural shift we're seeing in some of these areas have been facilitated by having platforms now where anyone can tell their story and it can reach millions and millions of people. And Tumblr has been a big part of that for us.
I think that one of the ways, too, that we're seeing the storytelling kind of take a life of its own is that there are more male allies of Planned Parenthood, just as Planned Parenthood serves more men every year, which is something that's been really heartening, and that's why it's heartening to see men on the board of Planned Parenthood who also do awesome stuff. What more can we do, mostly to bring men into the story of reproductive rights and change the perception that it's such a female space?
Right. Well, I'll say a couple of things, but then as a national board member, David Karp, you'll have some
put you on the spot.
Observations as well. Well, I'll say one thing that's just sort of an indication of how things have shifted was even the marches the day after the inauguration. I don't know how many folks were participating in those, but it was amazing. And to me, the interesting thing about that, because it was explicitly a march about women's rights and women's equality, but there were obviously tons of men, hundreds of thousands of men that showed up. And the interesting thing to me was, it was because I believe now men in this country increasingly want their daughters to have the same opportunities that their sons have. And that means including the ability to decide when and whether to have children, being able to finish school if they want to, being able to get a career. And that, to me, is when we begin to see this thing shift, right? Because if it's just women fighting for women, we're never gonna quite get there. At Planned Parenthood, we see it literally every day because men come in as patients. We do hundreds of thousands of STI testing every year and treatment for a lot of young men. And I think I was born in Waco, Texas. A lot of places we serve folks, if you don't want to go to your family doctor maybe and talk about the potential of an STI or treatment or how to stay safe and how to have safe sex. And Planned Parenthood increasingly, I think, plays that role. And I was actually struck the other day, I was in San Diego visiting our health center there, and as I walked by the waiting room, it was full of men, and usually the TV has the soaps on or something, but it was ESPN, and I realized it was vasectomy day at Planned Parenthood in San Diego. So we're trying to do much more to serve the full reproductive health care needs of our communities. And I would say we've also seen an incredible growth in the LGBT community services, including transgender services, which we are very, very proud to have in many areas of the country. And it's only growing. It's only growing. And I've learned a lot about the unbelievable barriers that transgender people in this country face to get access to honest, non-stigmatizing healthcare. So we got to do more of that.
Yeah, look, as I think about, as I reflect on my experience of coming in closer as a kind of unlikely ally, I guess, of Planned Parenthood.
Not an unlikely ally
at all. But
no.
as somebody who was definitely sitting on the outside of this, who cared but didn't know how much I care. I think folks who have these stories to tell need to realize that those stories really do work at drawing people in. It's hard sometimes to engage with or fully appreciate this stuff when it's politics, but when it's somebody's life, when it's their story, it can really help you empathize, and it can really help you then kind of understand what's really at issue here and what's at stake. And that's the thing that we've seen proliferate so well on Tumblr. And this wasn't by any kind of grand design of Tumblr, but out of the kind of tools for free expression, tools like reblogging that allowed those stories to spread. All of a sudden, stuff is showing up in front of you that you didn't know that you cared about, but suddenly really draws you in. And then when you have these kind of experts or social justice warriors who get up there and really help you take that to the next place, help you understand, it's not just, an issue that you need to be aware of, it's a fight that we all need to fight together. They can then help you can then help us take that to the next place, figure out how to be more supportive, take political action, spread the word, help educate, whatever it's going to take. And that's building so effectively now through the storytelling that's possible when you can reach out beyond just your geography, just your high school, just your local community, outside of just kind of the celebrity bubbles, and actually reach other people like you can on platforms like Tumblr.
When you started Tumblr, was this something that you knew you wanted to bake into the DNA of doing this kind of activism work? Because we've seen it around internet privacy issues. Tumblr has taken a big stance, and in some ways, I think in Silicon Valley, that's a really not easy, but it's a natural fit for a lot of companies to do that. It benefits them, but I think that a lot of people see this partnership, the Tumblr and Planned Parenthood, in some ways as Tumblr taking a really, really, really big leadership role in this? And is that something that you always envisioned that you were going to, a direction you were going to go in?
It definitely was not something we originally envisioned. I mean, for all of these kind of causes and issues that we've taken part in, like so much of what Tumblr's become, it was really an evolution out of the community, out of the people using Tumblr. We started pretty humbly as a new way to blog, as a kind of novel publishing platform, and out of that, these communities really started to take shape. All of a sudden, people who cared deeply about what each other were saying, what each other were interested in, started to find each other. Out of that, whole community started to really come to light. And like all of the features that have really come to define Tumblr, it was really us looking at the community, going, "This is so special. This is magical. This is huge. How can we do a better job of supporting it?" And out of that really came our just doing everything that we could to make sure that we were there to lift up this community that clearly wanted to change the world, clearly wanted to have an impact. So it's certainly become part of our DNA, but no, it wasn't the original kind of. This thing started much smaller, much more humbly than that.
Yeah, it's been really cool too to see how Tumblr employees themselves have really taken.
Oh, they really care. They really care.
To caring. So and that's because of the space too that you've created, but. I guess, so does it make business sense for you to go in this direction and to do that as corporate social responsibility? In a sense?
Look, I think we'll see, but certainly it's been, I think, one of the most powerful promises we've been able to make to our community is like, no, look, we haven't sold out. We haven't gone like totally sterile in corporate. We're right here beside you, supporting you in all of these fights that you want to fight and all of these issues that are important to you. That has been, I think, way more meaningful than any other gesture that we could have ever made to this community. And I will also say it's meant more to our team and all of the people and partners we've had the privilege of working with than I think, again, any other gesture that we could have made to the industry. Cool. Yeah, I hope so. I hope it works.
I want to brag on David on something else too, because I know we're talking just about this issue of corporate culture, and Tumblr has been amazing, and the team and David personally. But David has also been willing to tackle any problem, which of course there are many that we're struggling with how to address, because the need for just even basic healthcare in this country is so huge. So I will never forget a meeting we had where we had decided, and this is going to sound crazy to all of you who probably do tech every single day of your lives, but it was like that we thought, okay, we finally need to start scheduling people on mobile phones. I know, it's crazy. Whoa, what a radical concept. And but it was just kind of interesting because we had a board meeting and we were explaining, okay, when people will come on and then we'll ask them for this, and then we'll ask them for their zip code, then we'll ask them if they have children. And David's like, forget all that. Just book the appointment. You have to reduce the barriers that folks have to getting access to care. And it was revolutionary for us because we're healthcare providers, so we're thinking of all these. But it was really David pushing us that has resulted in now. Last year, we booked almost 1 million appointments through mobile phones in this country, and which is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And a lot of these are young people who might never find us any other way, or needed to book an appointment after hours, or frankly, and this is incredible to say this in this day and time, but there are still young people who probably just couldn't literally pick up the phone and say the words they needed to say, like that I need an appointment. And we hear that, and Chelsea hears that online a lot. And so I just think David has also applied his brain power to thinking about ways in which, again, we use technology for good to make sure that we're getting people to the information and care that they need. So anyway, it was amazing. It was crazy that we didn't figure it out, but you helped us.
It's been so much fun and such a privilege, and I'm sure most people in this room know this, but not only is this a healthcare organization that's out in front of the world, the country, innovating in every way that they can, but they are innovating for some of the most sometimes desperate, helpless people, or people in their most desperate moments who really, need help. This is more than just like advancing medicine. This is doing everything that we can, making sure that we're harnessing like every available resource and technology to make sure that people in their scariest, most desperate moments get the help that they need. This is important.
What would you say kind of to people in this room who are like, I work in tech, I'm an ally. What do you need from your tech allies the most right now?
What do we need? Well, let's see. I'd say first, I guess people know we're under attack by Congress right now. And so one of the things that David has really been helping spearhead is getting more folks in the tech community to literally stand with Planned Parenthood. And so we can talk more about it in terms of, but they're proposing to block people that are on Medicaid or come to us under federal programs from being able to come to Planned Parenthood. It's really important, if I could just take one moment to say, we are not in the federal budget. So there is no defunding of Planned Parenthood. We work like every other hospital and health center, any kind of community health center. We get reimbursed for preventive care. And basically what Congress is saying is that folks who've been relying on us for years can no longer go to Planned Parenthood. And so, and the position we're taking with Congress is if Congress can go to any healthcare provider of their choice, then women in America should have the same right. I think in this moment, it's just incredibly valuable to have people post on social media their own Planned Parenthood stories. And when you have as big an alumni association as we do of former and current patients, those stories really make a difference. Absolutely communicating with members of Congress and the White House about the vital role that Planned Parenthood plays in this world. And particularly in these next 2 or 3 weeks, it's absolutely essential. And I know and we kind of launched something today. I don't know if we're going to say that, but.
We did, so yeah.
I didn't want to steal your thunder.
No, sure. Wasn't sure when we were putting it out there, but.
I don't either.
No.
Okay, we'll wait. We're just going to hold on it.
Well, it is out there, so it's out there, so let's talk about it.
So look, the thing that I most want to see more of out of this industry are just more, not just tech leaders, but just more of the humans that work in technology, work on these platforms, represent a lot of these communities, standing up and speaking up. It is so important to these communities. It's so important to so many of these teams. We certainly see that in our team at Tumblr. There are folks working on all of these platforms and leaders too at most of these tech organizations that really do care, where these are causes and issues that are hugely important to them. It's been frustrating to see so few people speaking up. I think this year is changing the game a little bit. I think more and more the folks working on these platforms, working at these tech organizations, see that we're just not in a world and a time where you can kind of sit this stuff out anymore. In this moment, we're calling on all of them. The tech industry at large to come and stand behind Planned Parenthood at this hugely critical and terrifying moment. Really, there's a scary downside here if we screw this up.
And it makes a difference. I guess actually I just flew in from Washington this morning, and I'll tell you, the one thing that does make a difference is calling your member of Congress, calling your U.S. Senator, calling the White House, because they don't usually hear from constituents. I know the day after Speaker Ryan announced that he was going to try to defund Planned Parenthood, you literally couldn't get a call into the switchboard within a couple of hours because it was so, I think actually it was the largest, those couple of weeks were the largest outpouring of calls to Congress that we've ever seen. And so, and it works. I can tell you just from being at the Senate yesterday, it makes a huge, huge difference. Even if your member of Congress doesn't agree with you, it makes a difference that they know people care and that they're calling.
Mm-hmm. So one easy way to let people know that you care, I know there are a lot of folks in tech here this weekend. We got a hashtag Tech Stands with Planned Parenthood. Please raise the volume, make sure that people know that you stand with this organization. As much as you can, please try and rally your communities, your teams, leaders at your companies to get out there. As much as we can add you to the fight here, we're going to be able to, we have a real shot at winning this.
Yep.
We can do it.
Absolutely. And I'll just put one last plug in. So I think Heather Holdridge is here, who's like this unbelievable fierce tech leader that works with Planned Parenthood, and on March 29th we're going to pink out the internet, and so awesome. Anyway, so put that on your calendar because we're going to need everybody to just March 29th, because that's right about when Congress is going to be or the House. It's a fast-moving train up there. It's hard to know right now, but right about then. So yeah, mark your calendar, and that's going to be, we're going to need all your ideas and all your best best energy to turn the internet pink that day for Planned Parenthood.
That's cool. You touched on, David, this truth of like a lot of people are not necessarily like bold about their stance with Planned Parenthood. Obviously, a lot has changed since the election. Cecile, beyond storytelling and sharing hashtags, are there like proven? I'm always like want the winning technique. And like, how do we get people on this side? How do we get them to understand that this is actually, it is life-saving, it is reasonable, it is healthy, and to be louder and bolder about their involvement with Planned Parenthood?
Yeah.
Can I just give one little bit of
Please
color?
do.
Which is
Absolutely.
So we didn't get pulled into any of this political stuff until a few years ago, and actually one of our board members, one of our investors, really, who happened to be out in front of some of these political causes that were going on at the time that were really important to him, just started to really just with every opportunity pull us into what was going on and did everything he could to make it as relatable as possible to us, our team, and everything that was kind of special about this community and platform that we were building. And it took a while. It took just him kind of constantly chipping away at me and the team until he finally got through to one day I remember he was running me through it, something that was going on that week, or something, I think a bill that was headed to Congress that week, going, oh, this could be really bad. This could hurt. I think this was around some of the SOPA PIPA legislation that was threatening to censor whole swaths of the internet. And finally for us, we were a couple dozen people at the time at Tumblr. It finally clicked that, oh, this is something that we really care about. That's really going to affect our community. That they should really care about. And when that finally got through to us, we were lit up that weekend and did everything that we could to build some programming and activation to help educate, empower, and get our users involved in the fight. Give them the tools to do something about it. And that came from one person who was part of the family just banging on us until we finally got it. You can do this. I mean, you can pull more people in and get whole platforms, whole communities involved in this thing. If it's important to you and you show other people around you that it's important.
That's right. I think that's great. And so I had a couple of thoughts. One is it's important to remember, at least, I mean, this is the real luxury we have at Planned Parenthood is we're really popular. It's not even like trying to convince people to support something. We have 70% approval in this country for federal money going to Planned Parenthood for healthcare. We're 4 times more popular than U.S. Congress, okay? So, which I keep trying to explain to them. Get on our side. You're going to do better. I'm going to guarantee you. So I think and also I will say, because I think this is an important issue, is that after the election, we saw even an increase in support for Roe versus Wade, and it's the highest it's ever been in this country, 70% support for Roe versus Wade. So I want to say, to give comfort to people who are worried about they're getting out on the edge, I actually think the problem is we have the vast majority of this country, and we have to give voice to that. So that's one thing. The second thing, I think what David said is really important. That I guess like everybody else, I mean, I walk out of the subway or walk out of the airplane, and people say, what do I do? And I feel like everyone's waiting for the perfect magic thing to do. And so I just basically say now, my message is don't wait for instructions, okay? You just have to start going. And I think that's what Mom would say if she were here. This is not a time in which there's going to be some on high thing that's going to happen. Look at the Women's March. That happened, honestly, it was an idea. There was a lot of organizing behind, but it was just basically people just said, I got to be somewhere and I got to do something. It's the largest march in the history of Texas on that day here in Austin. I mean, that's amazing. So I feel like this is the time, and as David said, I mean, I think history will judge us where we were in this moment when everything we cared about, not only reproductive rights, but LGBT rights and immigrant rights and transgender rights and voting rights and civil rights and Black Lives Matter. It is time for people to actually stand up and be counted. And there are plenty of opportunities and ways for people to do that. But just to ping back to what David said, and this may be part of the conversation folks want to have here, but I just was in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It's a great place. It's a great place. I didn't even plant that. But I went to Kenosha, Wisconsin for, of course I wanted to see it, but also it was because That's Paul Ryan's home district. And we have 3 health centers, 3 Planned Parenthood health centers in Kenosha, Racine, and one other town. These are health centers that all they do really is provide family planning, birth control, cancer screenings to thousands of folks every year. We don't provide abortion services in those communities. And most of the people who come to us are on through federal programs. So basically, if Paul Ryan has his way, those health centers will be either non-existent or empty. And so I went to meet with some of the patients, and these were women who told these incredibly passionate stories about how Planned Parenthood had literally saved their lives. In fact, one woman there, I'll never forget her, Lori, she came because we had helped detect her ovarian cyst that she had to have immediate surgery, and it was only because of that surgery she was able to have her daughter, 13, who she just brought to Washington to try and meet with Speaker Ryan. So these are the kinds of folks who actually, and what they said at she said at this press conference, she said, I was always a quiet supporter of Planned Parenthood, but I'm not going to be quiet anymore. And then she told me that here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, they started a little group on Facebook called Forward Kenosha, whatever that is. They now have 1,800 members in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And so it was also to me a story about not only that you can kind of organize up and get with big organizations and be part of that movement, but you can also just start your own movement. And if everyone does that, we can take back this country for the values that we believe in. And I think it's time to do that. So
I think one really important point too that you alluded to earlier is how, because of this conversation, this evolving conversation we're having about sexuality in this country, and the awesome ways too that Tumblr has participated in just people being able to like walk more into their truer selves. Like the mix of service that you provide has changed, and also now you are in a position where you can be an ally to a lot of other causes and really amplify what that looks like. And so I was wondering if you can talk more about the kind of the LGBT work specifically that you guys do.
So, I mean, we're very proud to be not only provider of healthcare services, and as I said, transgender services that every year are increasing. And it's been quite incredible to, again, it's been a learning process for the organization of just the struggle that folks have in so many states to get access to services. But it also means not just in the healthcare realm and the education realm, although that's a really important part too, to make sure that since, if 2.5 million people see us at our health centers every year, about 6 million see us online every month. And so it's incredibly important that the issues and interests of the LGBT community are reflected there as well. And that's one of the things Tumblr just does an amazing job of, is sort of demystifying and speaking honestly and openly about all kinds of sexual health issues. But it's been important for us to show up as well, not only for the LGBT community, but frankly, the immigrant rights community. And I know that, and some of the reproductive justice women who I just want to shout out, I don't know if anyone's here, but the reproductive justice community has been really leading the fight for not just reproductive rights, but actually honest to God access that's equal across this country. And they've really changed the way I believe we've talked about so many issues. And I hope we've become a better partner and better at showing up for small grassroots organizations that are making enormous difference in some of the toughest communities in this country. But I too have seen this, and David, I don't know what your reflection would be at Tumblr, but I know right after the election, a lot of the progressive groups began meeting, and now we meet regularly, and it is absolutely one for all and all for one. I think a feeling that, as we feel like Planned Parenthood, and one of the reasons that I feel so passionately about going to, and I'll be speaking at an immigrant rights meeting next week, is that our patients are immigrants. We see everyone. We don't care your immigration status, your refugee status, because healthcare should be a right in this country, not a privilege for people. And our patients are folks on Medicaid, and so we fight for Medicaid expansion just like any other healthcare issue. Our patients are LGBT people. Our patients are, you name it, and so we've got to be there. It's so important because our patients expect it. Our supporters expect it, and it's the way we live out our mission. And I think it's never been more important. And I think there is, David and I talked about this a little bit. I think there's sort of a struggle here about, how much people want to sort of go along to get along. I just think this time that if we don't stand up for our values now, when are we ever going to do it? So we take that very seriously at Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, look, I just think looking at these huge institutions that we believe in so much really standing beside each other in a bigger way than they ever have before, seeing this all for one for all kind of spirit being demonstrated and executed so well. We need to take that back and remember that these movements are built on people, and these communities of people can cross over too, and we should be looking outside of just whatever that Facebook group is, whatever that little bubble or cause is that we've really kind of bought into or is hugely personal or important to us, and look outside of it a little bit to the people who are frankly fighting a lot of the same broader fights, in some cases fighting the same people or politicians, and realizing that we can be a lot more effective if we all stand together. And that sometimes means coming to the aid of some of these other communities and movements in their moments. And again, we've seen that demonstrated in a few big moments with some of these big institutions. One of the things I've been most inspired by, you can certainly see it on Tumblr in a really big way, is in the LGBT community moment, in the Black communities moment, in any number of these different kind of communities or causes moments. All of these other communities very often are people from all of these other communities and causes showing up to support them, even if it's not their cause, even if it's not the one that personally affects them. Those are moments where we can stand next to each other and help, again, move the whole cause, move our whole world and society forward. So we can do that too.
That's right. Intersectionality.
Yeah, intersectionality.
Well, what's kind of cool. I mean, I know this is a global conference and whatever, but we are in Austin. Yeah. It was really. I wasn't here last week, but for folks in Texas, they remember 3 years ago when folks day after day after day swarmed to the Texas Capitol to fight the abortion restrictions, and of course Wendy Davis did her iconic 13-hour filibuster, and just really captured the imagination of what could happen in Texas, and and then to see the Capitol filled last week, was it this week or last week? I'm sorry, on the transgender issues was amazing, right? Because it felt like, okay, we actually now are beginning some muscle memory, what it means to stand together and fight for things we believe in. And maybe someday we'll actually elect people for the state legislature who believe the same things. But it was really potent to see, even though I was in Washington at the time. So I think it's a sign of a different kind of different day.
That's cool. In terms of where the fight stands now, I feel that with the administration, it's like, who knows? With how truthful they're being with a lot of these reports that we're hearing about. But I think that from your perspective, it would be great to hear kind of what you think, how in danger are we or not, and really dispel some of the stuff that we're hearing in the news cycle specifically.
Well, we definitely don't have time to dispel all the things that are in the news cycle, but I like that idea. So I'll just say from the perspective, I'll just speak from the Planned Parenthood perspective right now, is we are really in danger. This is serious. So if people want to it's like time to get the children, the house is on fire. This is it. And this is because I was at the House of Representatives yesterday where they just jammed through total health care bill that would radically change access to health care and insurance coverage for millions of low-income people in this country. And it was done. They made folks stay all night, overnight, and jammed it through. And that's their intention, is unless they hear from people across this country, this thing is on a fast track, and it would end access to Planned Parenthood. It would end access. It would, we'll see what happens on Monday when the Congressional Budget Office comes out, but probably, the early estimates are 15 million people in this country may lose health insurance coverage. This is a complete radical rewrite of healthcare as we know it. And so this is the time. It is not, this is not a test. This is the real thing. And it's also why it's so important right now for people to be contacting their members of Congress and contacting the White House and marching and showing up anytime you get asked, if you can, because this is, they're really planning on running the table. And it's just incredible to me. Again, I was listening to Speaker Ryan yesterday because he did a big explainer of his healthcare bill, and his whole thing was on patient choice. Okay. Okay, so I guess it's like patient choice unless you choose to go to Planned Parenthood, right? Or it's patient choice unless you're looking for reproductive health care. And so make no mistake about it, this is a piece of legislation that goes after women and low-income people and the elderly, and we got to make a lot of noise.
So concretely, before we start taking questions and as people walk out of here, a couple of things that they can do are call their congressman, like constantly.
Repeatedly.
Do what I do. Every time you get angry, give money. It's the best. It's the best way to spend your money, honestly. Give it in Mike Pence's name, if possible. And support the Tumblr hashtag,
yes.
which is...
The everything hashtag.
The
it's
everything
everywhere.
hashtag.
Please put it everywhere.
Tech stands with...
Tech stands with Planned Parenthood. Tech stands with PP.
Tech stands with PP. Put it on everything you own.
Please, guys.
There will be a rally on Sunday, correct?
Oh, that's right. There will be here
and you're all
in Austin.
invited.
Yes.
We're at Mohawk on Sunday. Please come hang.
And actually, could I say that too? I want to give a big shout out here to Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas that provides health care. In fact, if you drove in on 7th Street, you probably saw the Planned Parenthood, one of the health centers here. These are folks who do amazing work. And actually today is, I can't remember exactly the title, but it is the day that we appreciate abortion providers across this country for the work that they do. So this is a day to thank the people who, despite protests and pickets and really a tough situation many times, provide safe and legal abortion to women in America, and they really deserve, or to people in America, and they deserve our thanks. So that's something else you can do, is thank the provider.
Great. We appreciate you, Cecile.
Yeah. I get plenty of appreciation. Really, the folks that just to me are unbelievable in this country are the doctors and clinicians and staff that provide reproductive health care at Planned Parenthood health centers, and really proud of the folks in Texas in particular. So,
thank you both so much for being here. I think that this conversation was so illuminating in the ways that tech and activism, and specifically Planned Parenthood, can really walk together and keep on changing lives, and meeting people at this place where they're the most vulnerable and offering them transformative options, really. So we're really excited to see where this goes and keep being loud and really like this. Yeah, this moment is transformative. So who knows? Next time we talk, what will happen? We'll take a couple of questions from the Slido.com, I believe. If you haven't put in your question yet, feel free to. And otherwise, I think we also have a mic if you are in the audience and would like to ask something.
And can I just mention one other thing that I forgot to tell you, because we talk so many times about just the challenges, and there are many, but in the last 8 years, we have really revolutionized access to family planning and birth control in this country, and sex education somewhat through online properties. And because of the fights we all did together, we got birth control covered under the Affordable Care Act, and 55 million women now have it at no copay. So we've got to fight to keep that. That's really, really important. But as a result of that, and because we're getting better methods of birth control, and we're taking cost out of the equation in many cases so women can get the best kind of birth control, we are now at a historic all-time low for teenage pregnancy and a 30-year low for unintended pregnancy in America. And that is really something that, so it's like, I just think it's so important that we don't forget that these things actually matter. It really changes the opportunity for people to have access to affordable, high-quality health care. So I just always like to remind people that there's good news even in the midst of, I think, sometimes really challenging political times.
That's awesome. Our first question from Slido is, what is your #1 recommendation to Planned Parenthood supporters who want to help protect women's health care freedom beyond just giving to Planned Parenthood? Since most of us already do. Everybody in this room should, 100%.
Thank you. No, thanks. Well, so we mentioned a couple of things. One is also you can sign up as a Planned Parenthood Defender, which is a way to be a constant activist, and we're constantly sending things out to you about like what's coming up. Because part of the problem is, I think as Amina said, is like this is a fast-moving train, and so sometimes we can't say exactly what's going to happen until in the moment. I know this week, actually, right after the House voted, I think overnight 1,000 people got activated through that and showed up at congressional offices. So it really matters. And you know. Again, I think I know it just sounds incredibly boring and tedious, but contacting your elected officials, really at all levels, it matters. I know people don't think it does, but and calling really matters. They just don't hear from people, and you would be surprised how 100 calls into an office, into a congressional office, can just blow people's minds. And then I would also just say my other recommendation to Planned Parenthood supporters is support other organizations too that you believe work on important issues. I mean, we are joined at the hip with the ACLU. They're like our best allies and champions all across this country, but a lot of other progressive groups too who are doing really good work at the local level. And support your local Planned Parenthood. That would be my pitch. Thanks. All right.
People can also work at Planned Parenthood too, right?
And you can work at Planned Parenthood.
Right?
That's right. You can work at Planned Parenthood. And no.
Great. Sir, what's your question?
Sorry. Hi, I'm Ryan. Cecile, thank you for your work. I consider you an American hero. The right's tactics, communication tactics, have sort of framed Planned Parenthood as this like evil that I don't see it coming back from, like as a discourse. When we talk about reproductive rights and sexual health care, it's like, where's the space to push these things forward, and how long do we hold on to, I know this is like contentious potentially, but like Planned Parenthood as a name, a very powerful organization, but I don't feel like there's any way to pull it back from the right in any sort of positive direction.
So I'll give you my thoughts on that. First of all, despite the fact that, yes, there is an industry that literally gets up every morning to try to put out fake news. I mean, I think we were the original fake news target probably in this country. Despite all that, we are more popular than any nonprofit in this country. And that's not just because we have good messaging. It's actually because we provide healthcare to people and they know it. But that doesn't mean we are always working to try to educate folks about what we do and to listen to people. So I think it's important that we continue to try to tell the story. That's why I tried to tell this. That's why I told the story earlier about actually the progress we're making in America, because the things that we are doing, providing access to affordable health care that helps people, particularly young people, sometimes stay in school or get a job, find a career. These are issues that are supported by everyone across the country. That said, I think I really strongly believe, even though I had the same kind of initial thoughts that you're talking about when I first started, like what about the name? There is incredible equity in this name. And the truth is, everyone, or pretty much everyone who has gone to Planned Parenthood can remember exactly when it was and what they needed and what happened. I mean, I remember going to Planned Parenthood, when I left Texas and I knew nobody, and I was in Rhode Island, and that was the one place I could go. And so that kind of relationship is strong, but we have to always continue to live up to that promise to people, because that is how we build support in this country. And then the other piece of it is, we spend a lot of time trying to support people in office who support reproductive rights. We also just have to change the culture, though, in this country. And this is where I really want to shout out the reproductive justice community, because for too long there has just been too much stigma and shame around every single issue that we're talking about here. And it's unbelievable. And you talk to young 12, 13-year-olds who are talking about even having your period is still stigma, right? I mean, being embarrassed. We have to change this. We have to talk about sex and sexuality, gender identity, abortion, birth control. These are facts of people's lives, and we have to talk about them openly and honestly. And again, I think the RJ community has been out in the forefront, and we have to all get in behind. It's exciting that I think a lot of magazines now and media are talking more openly about these topics. Shonda Rhimes is putting on an honest abortion story on mainstream television. This is what we have to have, because until we change our cultural attitudes and willingness to just be more open and honest, we can never change our politics. So that's what we're working on. I think it's really important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody in the room wants to know, do you have any examples of a personal abortion or contraception story that has actually changed a policymaker's mind and resulted in policy change?
Not enough, but I absolutely have seen it, and we have seen, I've personally seen members of Congress who have come and visited our health centers. That's what we try to do, is to get people to actually, you talk about demystifying Planned Parenthood. There's nothing like coming into our health center and actually meeting the doctors and the clinicians, and even sometimes visiting with patients, that changes people's stereotype of what a Planned Parenthood health center is like, and it has changed people's votes. But it's a constant struggle, and I think that the toughest thing here, and certainly people. I mean, I remember. Well, I'll use this one other last example. I remember in the state of South Dakota, there was the legislature had voted to make abortion illegal, but it had to go to the ballot, and that's a state that if you ever polled it, it's like one of the most conservative states in the country. But there was a woman and her husband who had, they said they would self-describe as pro-life, and yet they had a very complicated pregnancy and ended up having to terminate. And she did a television ad and spoke about sort of how this changed for her, and how it changed her understanding about how deeply personal the decision they had to make was, and how impossible it would have been to involve a member of Congress or a politician in that personal family decision. And those are the kinds of stories that actually do change then, I believe. Some members in the political world who are willing to listen. Unfortunately, I believe right now, for too many Republicans, they are so threatened within their own party that they vote against maybe even their own beliefs. And I say that we have a lot of Republican support, and I personally just do not believe these issues are political issues, and they shouldn't be partisan issues, because everyone needs reproductive health care. So I hope we can get to a day in which we can take the politics out of what should basically be personal health care decisions that families can make.
I think we've addressed some of the part of this next question. What are y'all's thoughts on the world's greatest healthcare plan, 2017?
Is that what they're calling it now?
I think that's the unofficial name. World's greatest healthcare plan.
Right.
Nobody wants their name on it, is the problem.
Well, I mean, look, I think that if you just look at the world's greatest healthcare plan, and it's the world's greatest healthcare plan that is supported by absolutely no one. I mean, we're talking it's like the American Medical Association, AARP, every healthcare leader that I know, obviously even people within the government who I'm sure now may be on their way out. This plan, and again, part of the problem with it is that they're jamming it through in just breakneck speed, because they're afraid as people learn more about it and learn more about how many people are going to lose their healthcare coverage, it's going to become even more unpopular. And that is why right now people have to be saying, this is so important, this can't be rushed. People have to be able to make decisions. And folks, these members of Congress, they need to be hearing from their folks back home. And as I said, we are fighting very hard to make sure that people in this country can continue to go to Planned Parenthood, because in many parts of the country, we may be the only family planning provider for safety net folks in the safety net, and they should have the right to go to the healthcare provider of their choice. But I know I've already said that, so that's what I think about the world's greatest healthcare plan.
We'll take one last question in the room.
Hi, my name's Annabelle Blackburn. Thank you so much, all three of you, for being here. And to use Tumblr speak, Cecile, you're such a non-problematic fave. Thank you so much for that.
What's it called?
That's a very good thing.
What's it called?
You're a non-problematic fave. So there are faves out there, someone you really look up to, and then you find out they're problematic. They say something that's like transphobic or against women's rights. Everything you've said today has just been like check, 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 check. So like, thank you so much.
Really
well done. But my question is about the role that tech companies can play, because I think we're seeing here a really fruitful partnership between Tumblr and Planned Parenthood, and I am so glad to see it celebrated in the National Convention Center here at South by Southwest, so that's fantastic. And I think that in the last 100 days, we've certainly heard a lot more about tech companies kind of starting to stand up and get involved politically, whether it was Salesforce's involvement with the Georgia bill last year, and all of the involvement that we're seeing at the moment with tech companies. We've heard a lot from this panel today right now about how citizens can get involved. But I want to know, when tech companies are able to mobilize and to incite such a brand recognition within and brand loyalty within people, how can we make it safer for tech brands to come in and to endorse political causes and kind of convince them that that's what they need to be doing in the next 4 years? We need the Microsofts and Googles and et cetera to just keep standing up for these things and to keep making it safe for us to do so as well.
It's a great question.
Yeah, really good question. Look, I think you need to remember that most of these causes, moments, and movements that these platforms kind of sign on to and get behind are ones that already have real momentum and kind of grassroots, a base on these platforms. The stuff that, unfortunately, platforms, we're usually willing to put ourselves out there. A lot of these platforms, which like to play it a little bit more neutral than we do, they're a little bit more allergic to movements that feel polarizing. So as much as you can make these places that you set up on these platforms, whether that's Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of these spots that you set up, the more that you can make them educational, activational, give people clear and positive kind of action that they can take, and open and inviting and inclusive, the easier it is, even to people that are on the far opposite end of this thing, the easier it is for us to raise you up, lift you up, and that's usually what we want to do. It's not usually we want to be, we want to be prescribing the cause and the moment, the movement, and telling everybody what to do and how to act. We want to be lifting up the influencers, the people driving these causes, these moments forward, and give them more reach, more resources to spread that far and wide, to reach more people on the platform, to help them radiate out of the platform and reach more people beyond just Tumblr, beyond just Twitter, beyond just Facebook, that sort of thing. So as much as you can be inclusive in that message, the easier it is for platforms, even the guys that like to play it really neutral, to lift you up. Yeah.
And I mean, Tumblr's been so great, and we're out of time, but I just think it's a time to open the conversation. I know I was just out and had been invited to speak at Google to the staff there, and that was that was just sort of an awesome opening, and just a chance to even get information out there, let people kind of vote with their feet, on things they want to get involved in. But I think the more that others do that, I think our belief is we don't have to convince anybody of our rightness. We just have to open up the opportunity for people to get involved, because that's what's going to change. That's really how we're going to have a true democracy. So I hope we'll get some of that out of this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.